Major funding for this program is made possible by grants from HSH Nordbank New York branch and First American Title Insurance Company of New York, Perfect Building Maintenance, Greenberg Traurig LP, the Moynihan Group. Additional funding for this program is made possible by grants from Antares Real Estate, Arbor Realty Trust, C.B. Richard Ellis, Cushman & Wakefield, Fremont Investment and Loan, Massey Knackle Realty Services, Muss Development LLC, Rosenthal & Rosenthal Inc., Signature Bank, Stonehenge Partners, Swig Equities, the Engel Berman Group, the Witkoff Group, Titan Capital, YL Real Estate Developers.
Welcome to the Stoller Report. My name is Michael Stoller. In December, the mayor approved an action by the city council. This special action is supposed to improve the number of affordable housing in the city of New York. I don't know if it's going to be good. I have my own personal opinions, but today I have these three gurus, these three individuals who've been involved with development, and one who even was on the panel, who are going to tell us their ideas of what these proposed changes in 421A meant. My guests today include Chuck Brass, Executive Vice President of Atlantic Development Group, David Kramer, Principal at the Hudson Companies, and last but not least, Jeff Levine, President of Douglaston Development. Chuck, you were on this commission. What was this commission?
Well, the commission was formed in the spring of last year by the mayor. It consisted of leading people in the real estate industry, in the development community, the lending community, the for-profit community, the not-for-profit community, as well as different people in different branches of government, the city council and different city agencies, as well as advocates, affordable housing advocates.
And the purpose was there was an alleged abuse, that there was not, that these 421A certificates or 421A benefits were hindering construction in New York? What was
No, I think the thought was that the program really, the less substantial changes in the program were made in the 1980s. There were some tinkerings with the program in the early 90s, and then again in 2004 and 5. But I believe that as a result of the substantial boom in the city's real estate industry, that there was thoughts amongst various people that now is a good time to look and see whether all of the incentives that the program provided were in fact still necessary.
I don't want to play inside baseball, but I want my viewers to understand what is the 421A program.
Well, let's take a step back for a second.
No,
you
use
the word abuse, okay? I think abuse is the wrong word. There were people who believed the current system was inefficient, and there may have been some basis to that.
But tell us what this was, okay? Explain what 421A means.
Well, 421A actually is a program which gave tax benefits to new projects initially in all of the city, and then there was an exclusion zone where it was determined that the central part of Manhattan, where prices were very strong, that developers and buyers didn't need the benefit of a tax abatement to motivate them to build and to buy units in those areas.
Now, let's get down to the basics. What do we mean? Okay, what effect does this have on the consumer, and what did it mean? You're saying there were, at one time, this was created in 1971, the first thing, and then there were the changes later on. So in 1971, there was, to help development, there was the creation of this 421A program. And what did the 421A program do exactly?
The 421A program enabled new buildings to be taxed for a period fundamentally of 10 years at just the taxation which existed on the property prior to development.
So basically, you had a tax abatement or a phase-in of the real estate taxes.
The taxes on
Yeah,
the
David?
completed product.
I was going to say, really, when we start looking at this, and we go back to 1971, the point of 421A was an incentive program to build new construction, and it was an economic development program because new construction is good for the city, and new construction is an economic engine for the city. And to just sort of simplify matters, you have a parking lot with an assessment of $100,000. And if you build a building that the city assesses the building after it's built, let's say it goes to $10 million. So the assessment starts at $100,000 when it's just a parking lot and eventually becomes $10 million. So what this incentive program did was to say, if you build us that building, which we all agree will be a benefit for the city, then you won't be paying taxes on the $10 million for 10 or 15 or 20 years. And that's a way for the city to incentivize the development community to build. It gives the new construction projects a bit of an incentive. And then it's not as though there won't be any taxes, it's just that the taxes will be phased in over time, and that eventually all these properties will be paying full taxes. That was the initial concept. And the important thing, I think, for all of us to consider today is that new construction projects still are the economic engine for the city. And that if you look at what new construction projects provide in terms of mortgage recording tax payments, transfer tax payments, sales tax, income tax, they are a tremendous boon to the city, to the extent that the city now has today a $2 billion surplus, that today, the mayor says that if anything, the city has a dependency or an addiction on transfer taxes, and that was, going back to 1971, that was what the program was. It was an incentive program for economic development.
Before Jeff Levine was president of Douglaston Development, I remember Jeff Levine as Levine Builders. And when he was Levine Builders, Jeff Levine built affordable housing. And the reason he built affordable housing was it was an easy entry to get into the building business, correct?
Affordable housing was a wonderful point of entry for a contractor, developer, to move into the development world. The reason being, the subsidies made borrowing for these properties very advantageous in terms of the risk-reward scenario. Very simply, the lenders took a primary position over the subsidies, so they were eager to make these loans. There was a limited risk and therefore a limited reward, but there was almost a guaranteed market because we have a city that had a great thirst and still has a great thirst for affordable housing at all levels.
So would you say today with these proposed changes, and you say right now we have to have the state approve it, or as Chuck said, cut it down, or whatever it is, which we'll get on to in a second, to what these proposed changes, would you be building affordable housing today with these proposed legislation that will go into effect?
In general, the creation of affordable housing has become more difficult over time for a number of reasons. In the first place, the actual construction of affordable housing, construction costs across the board in New York City have gone through the roof, whether it be union or non-union. There's great demand for commodities. The staging and logistics in New York City is unparalleled as a degree of difficulty, and there are not that many people who are capable of building here in New York City. The availability of land for affordable housing has also diminished greatly because of the demand of the private market in buying up property, whether it be in the Bronx or Brooklyn or in Harlem, where previously these properties were often available for affordable development, now are being gobbled up by private sector developers for fair market development. So there are a number of issues that are making the affordable housing creation more difficult, the last of which is the limited resources of the city of New York, or a limited commitment of late, to finance or subsidize this housing for the various levels of affordability.
Now, you pick up the newspapers, every ad, J. Condo in your Brooklyn project, Jeff Levine, who did two great deals, 325 Fifth Avenue, 555 West 23rd Street. Other projects, your company hasn't been involved with new residential of this. The ad says 421A abatement. And what does this 421A abatement mean when you were selling a condominium on Fifth Avenue in Sophie, new neighborhood south of Fifth Avenue, or on West Chelsea, or in Chelsea, or in J. Condo? What does it mean to the buyer? What did this mean to a purchaser? Because that's who I really want to get to. And then we're going to get Chuck to tell us what happened at this committee and what the proposed changes are.
So using J. Condo as an example, Getting back to the parking lot becomes the building. One of the problems that's broken in the system today is that new construction projects are carrying a greater burden of the tax assessment citywide. And there have been all sorts of citywide studies that have indicated that if you look apples to apples, new condominium projects versus a luxurious co-op around the corner, that the taxes are almost double on the new condominium. So developers going in with these projects know that they're going to get hammered with high assessments for their condominium projects. That is sort of ultimately the biggest problem that needs to be fixed, that the Commission only dealt with very slightly.
But let's
so the
get back to
problem
this.
is,
You're selling condominiums
okay, so,
next to Manhattan Bridge. He
right.
sold on Fifth Avenue.
I'll answer
He
your
sold on
question.
23rd.
So that if the taxes at J Condo, full taxes, were comparable to other co-ops and condos in Brooklyn Heights, Dumbo, and Cobble Hill, there wouldn't be a need for anything called 421A. 421A is basically a gimmick to help mitigate the disaster of an overly aggressive assessment on new buildings. As a result, 421A in the case of J Condo gives a 15-year phase-in to the taxes, so that for 10 years, our buyers' taxes are very, very little. And then they phase in, and in 15 years, they'll be at full taxation.
And I'm going to give you an example, and then I want you to continue. Taxes for the two-bedroom apartment are $35,000 a year. The taxes on a two-bedroom co-op next door is $4,000 a year. That's the lunacy.
Well, you're not going far enough. You're actually not going far enough, because if you go to the other boroughs and you go to the 1- and 2-family homes in Brooklyn and Queens and the Bronx, you'll find that they're being taxed on a per square foot basis at a fraction of the $4,000. And it really gets to the root of the problem, which is political and social. Right now, we have a broken tax assessment system. And the city has chosen to mask the problem by overcharging new projects, be they rental or for sale, and then masking that or putting a Band-Aid on it by applying the 421A abatement. And I believe that trying to fix the 421A program by essentially eliminating it without addressing the underlying problem, which is this tax assessment problem, is only going to exacerbate the problem, and I believe it's going to cause a great problem in the creation of new housing going forward. Right. Similar to what happened, frankly, in 1986, when the 421A exclusion zone grabbed a big part of Manhattan. People rushed to the ground in order to beat that termination of the 421A abatement. The flood of that product, which I don't think we'll have a recurrence of now, in combination with the softness of the market, killed the real estate market for some time.
That could happen in December 2007. I think that every developer in town would agree that if the tax assessment policy were fair and that their product was comparable
but it's
to the
not
taxes
fair.
in the neighborhood,
but it's not fair.
then nobody would need 421A.
But here's my question, and then I'm going to get Chuck to tell us a little bit about what the commission and what the changes were. When somebody is buying an apartment, and I think I used Jeff's example. Jeff is building right now, planning to build in Long Beach. And Long Beach, it's full taxes. No abatement, no changes over there. Jeff's building over there, and Jan Berman, Engel Berman, built on 116th Street in Rockaway. Similar buildings, let's say they're identical buildings, they're on the water, they're different locations, but they're on the water. If somebody's buying an apartment and in Engel Berman's property over there, and the taxes are $40 a month, and they're going to Jeff Levine's property, and the taxes are $1,000 a month, there's a big difference, because people don't care. They say, what's it going to cost me per month? That's what it is. So the prices have to go down.
It's actually worse than that, because it's not a dollar for dollar equation. If your taxes are going to go up $900, it's not a rational calculation to say, okay, my mortgage can therefore go down $900, so I'm paying the same net monthly, and what can I afford with $900 left for the mortgage? What happens is that there's an overcompensation, because when you buy a unit that has high carrying costs, whether it's a high maintenance or high taxes, the market frowns on such a carry, to the extent that it overcompensates with a lower sales price. So if taxes are $1,000 higher, if you're paying full taxes, the sales price is going to be less than the equivalent of paying $1,000 less in your mortgage.
So, Mr. Commission, you were on the commission. What did these? I know it's holding on. So, what did this do? What did these wonderful pillars of the community say? You
Well,
said
first of
they
all, there
fixed
were-
some of the system, they screwed up part of the system. What did they do, Chuck?
First of all, there were the recommendations of the commission, and they were taken further. Those commissions were really taken as a starting point by the city council, which increased or enhanced some of the recommendations. I don't know if that's the right word. So these are the recommendations of the commission. First, as we said, in 1985, the city created a geographic exclusion zone where you couldn't get benefits unless there was some kind of affordable housing component to your project, either on-site or the so-called 80-20 program, or you could build affordable housing in the outer boroughs. A big engine of affordable housing production is the so-called certificate program, where people could build low-income housing in the outer boroughs, as my company does, and get 421A certificates and then sell them to developers of market-rate housing in the middle of Manhattan. The commission expanded the geographic exclusion zone to all of Manhattan, essentially south of the northern boundary used to be 96th Street. They've now gone into much of Harlem and all the way to the southern tip of Manhattan to Battery Park City, whereas the boundary used to be 14th Street or Houston Street. And they also included, the commission did, included areas along the East River in Queens and Brooklyn that were thought to be luxury neighborhoods where developers were building high-rises with views of the Manhattan waterfront that were viewed to be luxury housing. So the commission said in those areas, if you want to get tax abatement, you have to produce affordable housing. The council expanded this geographic exclusion zone further north into Harlem, all the way to 136th Street and 117th Street in East Harlem. They expanded it further in Brooklyn into all of what's called downtown Brooklyn, Park Slope, Cobble Hill, Carroll Gardens, even as far as Sunset
And
Park.
Flatbush Avenue, too? The
All
downtown
along
north?
Flatbush
Essentially,
Avenue,
what
yes.
they did is anywhere where a developer could conceivably do a fair market project, they thrust this tax of creating affordable housing within the unit.
Let's get back.
in
I
exchange
want to hear
for the
more of this.
abatement.
In exchange.
Okay, next.
So, and the last area was essentially Williamsburg, or East Williamsburg, what it's called now, or what we used to call Bushwick, were also included in these areas.
Prior to the show, you said there were some good things that happened. To me, it sounds like it was all disaster. What were the good things?
Well, you know, the good thing is that I think most people recognize that there were inequities or inefficiencies in the system, that there was, if there was going to be a geographic exclusion zone, that it didn't make sense to limit it just to the middle of Manhattan when prices in Soho, for example, were maybe even higher than they are on the Upper East Side or Upper West Side. So I think the commission and the council did, in fact, you know, go a long way towards rectifying some of those inequities.
Basically,
in
they
terms
went
of
in with
drawing
an
the
axe
boundaries.
instead of a
Right.
carving knife is what they did.
But there may be a general consensus amongst the development community that they expanded the geographic exclusion zone too far into areas of the city where it will have a significant impact on the ability to produce
Mr. Kramer.
housing.
The optimism is that it's going to stay apples to apples. All the development that we have heretofore seen will continue in the same trends, and yet there's going to be so much more affordable housing because every project will have a 20% set aside or pay full freight in terms of full taxes.
What Jeff Levine said, 1986-87, the world came to an end.
No,
okay,
I
it was
think what
it was
will
a number
happen-
of reasons that it came to the end.
Correct.
But here's part of the other thing. Everybody's going out today and they're saying because the state has to approve this also. So they may take an axe.
Well, the
even-
fear is, in defense of the city took this action, and the mayor initiated the commission because of the fear of what the state, left to its own devices, might do to make it even worse. So the city was not completely non-cognizant of the fact that it needed to have tax abatement in some form. Unfortunately, as a socio-political issue, the affordable housing advocates, the Democratic masses who control the politics via the vote, which is appropriate in the democratic society, their voices were heard, and the changes were sweeping. And we talk about what was good. There was a limit. The biggest problem of the inefficiency of the 421 program was the excess benefits, where they were showing baseball players and movie stars paying minimal taxes on magnificent penthouse apartments. Well, yes, that was an ineffective use of the tax abatement. And one of the simple efforts, which the real estate board helped push through in this change, was the limit on the valuation of $65,000. So the taxation. So the reality is that had they done that, it would have been enough. Diana, as we say. But they did much more than that. Instead of trying to curb the problems, they basically just came in with a broom.
David, a couple of weeks ago, I was writing an article, and we were talking about, I think you gave a great comment with regard to certain people capitalizing, garage owners. They were selling their garages. Tell my audience that comment with the 421A change in the garage owner. It's better to park the cars?
Yeah, I mean, my concern is that in 10 years this will all have ironed itself out. The problem is getting through those 10 years.
But in the 10 years, we may be losing housing. We may lose affordable housing. He's not going to build affordable housing, and you're not going to build affordable housing. You don't have an incentive to do it. And you know your boss isn't going to build it either. So 10 years. Give me the 10 years.
So the problem is that when this legislation, as currently conceived, takes effect, there is going to be many an impasse between the landowner and the developer. And what's going to happen is that if you're looking at a site in Cobble Hill or Fort Greene or the Lower East Side, where you're now either paying full taxes or doing an 80-20 if you're considering a project, then you have to say the land value is going to be, in the case of a project in Brownstone, Brooklyn, maybe $70 to $100 less in land value, because your sales price is going to take a hit of $70 to $100 because of the payment of full taxes. So you go to the landowner, the guy parking the garage, guy parking the cars, and say, good news, I have a great offer. It makes a lot of sense under the new legislation. Instead of offering you $170 for your land, I'm going to offer you $70 for the land. And the garage owner is going to take years before he or she will come around to thinking that
he's going to go a
just
step
lost.
further. He's going to say, I make more money parking cars. Leave me alone.
So then, in terms of the apples to apples, the idea that the same amount of development will occur, but there'll be more affordable housing for people to opt into the 80-20. Instead, there will be fewer development projects.
I have a question. I have a friend who owns a site where he has a McDonald's on Tillery Street in Brooklyn. Is he in trouble now?
He's in trouble because the Flatbush corridor, with all those 40-story buildings, has seen a lot of development. But if you look at that site, you have two options with the legislation as currently conceived. Either you do an 80-20. Now, with the land cost,
explain what an 80-20 is, okay? Quickly, we only have 5 minutes.
An 80-20 is a rental building where 80% of the units are leased at market rent.
Could be a condo now, you said, right?
So I'm getting there. So to get a tax break on the full taxes, you could do an 80-20, means either 80% renting and 20% affordable, or 80% sales and 20% affordable. Given the cost of construction, the cost of land for Tillery and Flatbush, there's no way that building can be a rental. It's going to have to be a condo because of the economics of condos. So now you're talking about, you have two options. You're either going to build a condominium where 20% of the units are rented to people at median incomes of 60%, and the offering plan is going to disclose every apartment that has that unit. Or you do a project that's 100% condo and you're paying full taxes. In either scenario, looking at the value of that land just went down by $100 a foot. So as
I
long
think
as
my friend Mike should keep the lease with McDonald's because
nice credit tenant.
As a good credit tenant,
unless they're happy to get $100 and are happy to.
And we have to talk about the most significant immediate impact of doing away with the certificate program. Obviously, having the low-income component within the building in the minds of some purchasers will impair the value of that building. You also have the added problem of how do you deal with the maintenance and carry and taxation benefit on the low-income component within the condominium as their share. The other issue is the trickery that you referred to earlier of the 421A abatement vis-a-vis the permanent mortgages. Lenders, appraisers have all conspired with us developers to allow their analysis of mortgage capability to be based on the taxes and the rate, as we know, at the time of the purchase. So if you're paying a diminished tax because of an abatement, you have the full value of your revenue disposable towards the mortgage. The fact that we all understand over time the abated taxes will kick in, well, that goes back to things will be okay later.
Now, Chuck, what's going to happen? You guys, your company, built all of this affordable housing in the Bronx. I mean, you created such really great projects where people got homes. What's going to happen? Are you going to be building? Jeff, would you build? And you even have an affordable housing component. What are you going to do now? Chuck?
Well, in terms of the affordable housing that we build in the Bronx or have built through the certificate program, we're obviously not going to be able to continue to do that, particularly. Definitely not going to be able to do it after December of this year. So we can continue to build affordable housing, but it'll mean that we'll have to actually apply to the city or the state for scarce capital resources that are allocated every year through the budgetary process, as opposed to through this as-of-right 421A program, and that will cost the city money.
Mean, there is one benefit, which is that as an affordable housing analysis, if you're looking for at the bang for the buck of paying for certificates for affordable housing versus a guaranteed income stream from the city budget, there will be a specific pot of money now set up for affordable housing.
And who's going to be the Solomon to make the decision? Who's going to give away this pot of
Solomon who's there now? HPD is going to have this capital. Capital source available.
There's another issue, and I don't know how much time we have left, but back when Chuck was the head of HDC, there was an issue that had to do with creating a fund. Instead of letting the market dictate the value of the certificates, which fluctuated in time, there was a concept of paying for the abatement into a fund that the city would coordinate, and that money would be directly placed by the city into the affordable projects. That was a very good concept. And I say that for the following reason. We talked about these before. When you're building these new jobs, if you're building a high-rise, the construction costs associated with a high-rise are far greater. And taking 20% of a high-rise cost and creating affordable units, you're going to get less affordable units than if you would have taken this money on off-site affordable creation through low-rise, mid-rise, very often non-union construction, which was cheaper to build.
So
the sort of sad thing, as far as I can see, is that right now we have a $2 billion surplus. So if one of the issues is how can we build more affordable housing, the development market is working very well right now. There's a lot of new construction. We're adding to the housing supply, and these economic engines with transfer tax and mortgage recording taxes are creating a $2 billion surplus. That's the affordable housing fund right there.
In a half an hour, you can't really do this, but I think it sounds to me, like Jeff said before, they were taking a knife to carve as opposed they took an axe. And I think the development cycle is going to be hurt, and I think there are other points of view on this. And I believe that I'm going to bring some of the other advocates, those housing advocates, in the weeks ahead to talk about what's going on. But I think our viewers got a pretty good idea of what's happening and this proposed changes. Let's hope the state doesn't really cut the tree down to nothing. I'd like to thank Chuck Brass, Atlantic Development, David Kramer, the Hudson Companies, and Jeff Levine, Douglaston Development, for being here today. See you next week.
Major funding for this program is made possible by grants from HSH Nordbank New York Branch and First American Title Insurance Company of New York, Perfect Building Maintenance, Greenberg Traurig LP, the Moynihan Group. Additional funding for this program is made possible by grants from Antares Real Estate, Arbor Realty Trust, C.B. Richard Ellis, Cushman & Wakefield, Fremont Investment and Loan, Massey Knackle Realty Services, Muss Development LLC, Rosenthal & Rosenthal Inc., Signature Bank, Stonehenge Partners, Swig Equities, the Engel Berman Group, the Wickoff Group, Titan Capital, YL Real Estate Developers.